Hello, this is Mel Thompson, and this is a podcast in a series, a podcast about political risk. Today we're going to be talking about the impact on gas prices, energy prices, if you will, if Indonesia comes back into OPEC. Now, a few months ago, I started to see reports of possible return to the OPEC family of Indonesia, and I was certainly reminded of the fact that gas prices are much lower now due to new production methods and also because of the infighting between OPEC nations and the strong will of Saudi Arabia to keep production at current levels and not pull it back. The question is whether or not a return of Indonesia will change the equation and tip the balance towards lowering production and thus raising prices globally. Now, for a half century, Indonesia held the title of the only Asian member of OPEC. However, in 2009, Indonesia opted out of the group due to a change in oil prices, and the change was so significant for Indonesia that it rendered Indonesia an importer as opposed to an exporter of oil. Domestic demand coupled with low production in 2009 compelled Indonesia to leave OPEC. It's that simple. Now they have reassessed all of their needs, all their economic, intuitive minds are working together, and they now feel that's a good opportunity to come back into OPEC. The new life that could be invested in OPEC as an organization and Indonesia economically by a new partnership or coming back to the family, if you will, cannot be measured simply in the price of oil, but it also needs to be measured in the political risk that it could create or mitigate, in the overall global impact on trade. If Indonesia does rejoin OPEC, and this is possible, it would resume its role as the fourth smallest producer in that organization. And it's just ahead of Libya, Ecuador, and Qatar. And it would also bring the total of OPEC member countries to 13. The energy costs that is the biggest political risk is the one that can be created by a tipping of the balance to eliminate the infighting, perhaps even convince Saudi Arabia to increase production, and this would certainly create a change in the price of oil. What the potential for this is, what the prospects and possibility is for this happening are unknown. They're incalculable, and I'm not a member of OPEC. I can't think of anybody in this country that's a fly in the wall. They may have some inside information, the government may, because of our relationships with some of these leaders that are members of OPEC. But overall, I think it's one of these things that you need to be well aware of, plan for, but not put a lot of credence in it as it going one way or the other. In the alternative, the new sources of production that have contributed to lower prices show no signs of going away or weakening. Now, for this reason, the prices may stay stagnant and possibly rise just slightly. This lower and less threatening rise in energy prices may temper governments from taxing and imposing fees on foreign direct investment and company profits. That is the real political risk here. Countries do not want protests. They don't want riots. They don't want problems. So therefore, in order to keep the cost for the people who live in these countries lower when it comes to energy, they're going to need to find a source of revenue. And a good source of revenue is taxing the profits from foreign direct investors and companies doing business in these host nations. And this is a true political risk. It's a government action that is going to impact the ability of an investor or a company to get a return on their investment. It's that simple. Is it a good thing or a bad thing? It is neither, depending on the situation. But it's one situation you need to look at and assume it could possibly happen. It's a fairly obvious one. So in the end, all may be this all may in the end be nothing more than just speculation that they may come back to OPEC. And if they do come back, it all may wash out in the end where nothing changes significantly in an adverse way. Indonesia rejoins OPEC, and prices can only go so far, particularly if Saudi Arabia continues to hold the line on lowering production and new energy sources remain strong. If these things remain as they are, it's really not going to be a big political risk. However, you don't know what it's going to be. Plan that it's going to be a political risk when it comes to taxation of foreign direct investment and company profits in these countries where you're doing business. This scenario is possible. I'm not saying it's likely or unlikely. It's just something that should be looked into, planned for, in the overall scope of mitigating political risk. This has been Mel Thompson.